Hello everyone, and welcome to the newest episode of the Read Right to Left podcast. I am G from the YouTube channel Simply G, joined by my always wonderful co-host Ray from Whimsical Pictures.
Hello.
And this month we're doing a pretty interesting topic. We're going to be talking about discontinued manga series in English. We're not talking about cancelled series in Japan or anything like that. Mainly or only series that got started being released in English in some capacity and then for various reasons was dropped incomplete, and most of these I think that we'll be talking about haven't been picked up again by a different publisher, but some of these we have seen over the course of the last decade really being relicensed as well. So it's an interesting kind of life cycle for manga in the English publishing, I find. And so hopefully this will be interesting to talk about and answer all your wonderful questions, everyone. And I hope we have some fun.
Yes.
Before we jump into the questions, Ray, what's your personal previous experience with kind of discontinued series? How have you found them impacting your reading over the course of your life within this hobby?
Frustration and sadness. But mostly, honestly, I was talking to you before, but like going through a couple of lists that I found in preparing for this of like series that have been dropped over the years.
Mm-hmm.
My most overwhelming experience is just of like being a little high school student at the public library, like, you know, devouring whatever manga I could get my hands on.
Mm-hmm.
And through that, like, reading a lot of the series on this list and, you know, not knowing what a discontinued series was back then or any of the, like, publisher stuff or anything. Just being very confused and sad when the library suddenly stopped getting volumes.
Being left on a cliffhanger.
Yeah, and then now I just look at the list and I'm like, so that's what happened to that series. What about you, G?
Similar situation. A lot of the titles that I've experienced that have been discontinued over the years were ones that I kind of went in blind to or had just found through various whatever recommendations. And yeah, in a similar sense, whether I was buying it for my personal collection or following it through a library, not being as informed as I am now about how the publishing industry is. And obviously when you and I were younger, we saw a lot of change in the industry, anime and manga industry, due to the global financial crisis and a lot of publishers going bankrupt or kind of changing subsidiaries and things. So it was a tough time for publishing. It was a tough time for the world. And obviously that was reflected in the economy and the publishing industry, which led to a lot of these series, which some now you could argue could be really big hits, just not finding their place and being a little too risky for a lot of publishers. So unfortunately, over the years, we've seen a lot of things disappear, as it were, and not as many as I would want have made a reappearance. But there's always the future. We can still hope.
Yeah, I mean, any manga fan that you talk to who's been collecting for a few years has their discontinued baby that they're just desperate for a license rescue on, and you just spend the days waiting.
Yes, yeah,
When
absolutely.
will my favorite series come back from the war?
Oh, dear. And on that wonderful note, I think we'll just jump straight into questions. We did get a lot of questions, as always. Thank you everyone who did send them in, and hopefully we can answer them all to some satisfaction. And I think we will start with a question from Rin at Rin Reads Manga, who asked, which discontinued series do you think have the lowest chances of ever returning, or you just don't see ever being rescued, for that matter?
From Eroica with love.
Yes. Some things that are long, things that are not a action shonen or a seinen drama or seinen action, things that are from less popular demographics, less popular genres. So From Eroica with Love is one that I definitely would include in that. Just too long, too many volumes, a bit too gay.
Yeah.
It's a bit too old as well.
But
just not
a bit too gay, but like not gay in the way that the kids these days like it.
exactly. The other one that I would say is probably Swan, which is sad. Because it's, again, long. Longer. It's 24, 25 volumes in Japan. And it's just, it's a little too old. It's about ballet, so although you could argue that we've seen an uptick in dance-focused manga thanks to Dance Dance Danseur and Ten Dance and Welcome to the Ballroom, but those are all very different approaches to that topic, and doesn't have the flair of like the over dramatic shojo. Just nuances. And so, unfortunately, I think that is one that we won't see making a return anytime soon.
Yeah, I don't think so. Probably not, like, unless we get collector's editions of a few random stories the way that we're getting with,
Lupin?
Other one, Yokohama...
Oh, Yokohama shopping log. I don't remember what it's called in Japanese.
Similar kind of thing, but, yeah, so unless we get, like, something like that, probably not something like Golgo 13 either. Just like anything super long. I see 3 different publishers tried their hands at Cran Shin-chan, apparently, which is very baffling to me, and not probably going to happen again.
Yeah. And I think
it's mostly the length.
The other one that comes to mind, which is a bummer because I would like to read it, is Moyashimon. Because although we have seen an uptick in like edu manga, like Heaven's Design Team and things like that, it's still, I don't know, I think microbes and microbiology is still just a little not that interesting for a lot of people, no matter how you package it.
Yeah. I mean, for one thing, they would have to package it better.
Yes.
Because those covers were terrible. But yeah, I think a lot of these, like, manhwa as well. We're getting a lot of manhwa these days, but those tend to be from, like, the webtoon sites and everything. That's what's trendy with the kids these days. A lot of these really, like, older manhwa that are very obviously aping a manga style and manga publishing format that, like, Tokyo Pop and some other publishers were experimenting with. I think those have kind of just been lost to time, unfortunately.
There's been a lot of titles that, similarly, as you said, Like, I could imagine Golgo 13 being released in a similar way to Lupin is now being released, or has been released by Seven Seas in just like a greatest hits collection. But I highly doubt we'll be getting, 100+ volumes of manga that really doesn't have a fan base outside of Japan to any kind of profitable capacity. Yeah, I think mainly the stuff that I don't think it really has a chance are things that are long and that are old. Just those two things. They don't help.
Nope.
From that, I think that's a good bouncing off point to continue with Lum Ranmayasha's first question, where they asked, are there any manga you think would do better if published now than when they were originally?
Wandering Sun.
Yes.
For sure. Yeah, that one stands out to me as one that really was just before its time.
Now, especially, we've seen such a huge push for manga featuring queer protagonists and LGBT themes. Obviously, Seven Seas has really grown a lot of their catalog through licensing a lot of LGBT manga, and we've also seen a lot of that mangaka's work come over in English since as well. We have Sweet Blue Flowers, we have Even Though We're Adults. So I would say that if another publisher as well, not Fantagraphics, attempted that series, whether they be single volumes or 2-in-1 omnibus editions, it would have a better, or a kind of a more perfect edition, say, it would have a better chance nowadays, because although we are getting a lot of queer manga and a lot of representation in manga of varying degrees, and although Wandering Sun does have its issues, it's not a perfect series and it's not perfect in its representation either, it is one of those foundational series that a lot of people think of when they talk about trans representation in manga and in media. And it helps that it has an anime as well, compared to some of the other stories that we're seeing being licensed. So, yeah.
And I also think of, like, along the same lines of, like, other works from the same author being published by other publishers later and doing better. There's a couple I can think of, like, my personal discontinued baby, Immortal Reign, which is by Kaori Ozaki, who has had success with Golden Sheep and The God's Lie, some shorter formed work of hers. Immortal Reign is her, like, sci-fi fantasy series. I think at the time it was brought out, it probably read more like a Trigun ripoff than it probably would now.
Yeah.
And would probably be sort of more of a welcome companion to her other books. And then I also feel similarly about Life, which is by Keiko Suenobu, who had a series that came out from Vertical quite a long time ago, but I think that brand of, like, gritty, edgy shojo manga about sort of the really ugly and messy parts of adolescence would probably have more potential to find an audience now than it did at the time, back when, around that time, I feel like shoujo manga was really, like, the image was much younger than it is now. So, yeah, that was probably a case of a lot of people reading it and being like, oh my god, what?
Excuse me? This isn't what I expected.
This isn't Fruits Basket.
I
also think the same of, like, sorry.
No, go ahead.
One more. I wanted to mention Supli
Oh,
by
that's what I was gonna
Maria
say!
Okazaki. Yeah! With, like, all the josei and, like, especially gal manga from, like, Kyoko Okazaki and Moyoko Ano.
Mm-hmm.
Ayazawa as well. Yeah, and Erika Sakurazawa's stuff, like, just coming back on MangaTube randomly.
Mm-hmm.
I think that that would do a lot better now than it did back then.
Definitely. We've seen the push into a diversification into that josei, that gal manga over the last maybe 3 or so ish years, and so I think people would be more accepting or more open to trying that series now than when Tokyo Pop was frantically trying to find something to that would stick.
And then just one more, and I'd like to direct this at any publishers in the audience. The 12 Kingdoms would do so good if you would just pick it up.
Please give me those novels.
It fits right into the, like, Eastern fantasy isekai trends that are happening in YA right now. The 12 Kingdoms would do so good.
Yes.
Somebody please.
Please. Please.
Can you, like, even with the covers that it used to have, I can imagine those covers selling so well now. They fit right in to the bookstore right now. Come on. Somebody.
Yeah, oh man. So one that I personally wouldn't necessarily collect, but I do think that would do much better now than when it was originally being put out would be Gintama, because that series we've seen, although I don't want to say that like gag manga always do super well, but we've seen a real uptick in people enjoying kind of Gintama style of humor from the current block of Shonen Jump simulpub titles. And I really feel, it's my opinion, that I really feel that if Gintama was being released right now, that Viz would be simulpublishing it without an issue. Compared to when they were putting it out, it was very gag focused. It was a little bit like, it's comedy focused, so it's not a huge amount of action necessarily up front, so it's a little bit different from what was being released at the time from Jump. I feel like if it was a series being released now in Japan with the structure that we have with simulpublishing and Viz's Shonen Jump apps and things like that, that more people, obviously it already has a huge fan base, it's already massively popular, but I think the hurdles when you look at translating jokes and things like that, which was one of the major reasonings that Viz gave to dropping the series, aside from low sales, you can't really make that argument anymore when you see things like Witch Watch, when you see things like Robico, or Me and Robico, whatever that series is. There's a lot of gag manga right now, and they seem to be doing pretty okay, and transitioning from a digital publication to a print publication, I think, would be a lot easier once you've done like a big chunk of the work week to week.
Yeah. I also think that, like, with the Shonen Jump app, that actually gives Gintama an even, like, stronger, like, environment to bring it out in, specifically because a lot of Gintama's humor that was so difficult to translate comes from literally just parodying the magazine and other series that are in it. So at any given time, It gets a lot of mileage out of the fact that it doesn't have to worry about copyright for series that are in its own magazine. So.
Yes. Absolutely.
And I mean, people who pay for that app anyway would probably appreciate such a self-referential Shonen Jump series, I think.
Yeah. So, from there, Loom asks, any discontinued manga you still want to collect? This is presumably stuff that we don't already have. Maybe it's stuff we already have. Maybe not.
I'll have Gintama eventually. It's on my long list of things to get.
Mine is
Swan.
Mine is Swan, and probably I pick up I have a couple volumes of Uroka, and I pick it up when I could if I found volumes cheap.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily need the full run, but it's episodic enough that you can just pick it up from anywhere.
Yeah, I want to get From Uroka with Love because Aoike Yasuko is a member of the Year 24 group, and I would like to have every Year 24 work published in English. So the completionist in me needs it. But I don't really go out looking for it, though, so someday.
And then Loom's third and final question is, what manga do you think have the best chance of being licensed, rescued, and republished, and which ones have you given up on?
I guess the ones that we were saying before, huh? I think something like Supli is, constantly being republished in Japan and is from quite a prominent and well-known author who also has a Twitter. I think that has potential. It's also not very long. That's the main thing. Yeah, looking at my little list here, I feel like that one stands out to me as having a chance.
Yeah, I think just echoing our earlier answers with Supli, with Gintama, with Wandering Sun, a lot of the stuff that was dropped at one point has been relicensed. We've seen a lot of publishers either relicense something for a print release or to continue a series digitally. We see that a lot from Kodansha specifically. So a lot of these series that technically don't have print volumes for the ending did eventually get finished in some capacity, and majority of the ones that had the highest chance of that happening has happened. So things like Beck, things like Norame Cantabile, things like even things that I wouldn't argue had necessarily a high chance, like the Drops of God, we've seen completed in English.
What wild universe do we live in?
It's really amazing. Things like Yozakura Quartet as well, that has been continued. Pumpkin Scissors. There's a bunch of stuff that if you had asked me 5 years ago whether they would still, whether they had a chance to see more of it being released in English, I'd say no. But because of the increase in digital publishing and in digital offering from a lot of publishers, we've seen more and more make their ways to completion, and it's amazing. It's kind of amazing.
And for things that I've given up on, things that are old, mostly.
Yeah.
I've given up on Immortal Reign as much as I want it, so... I have not given up on the 12 Kingdoms. Someone needs to get that now.
Give me 12 Kingdoms. I'd also, personally, I think that although they've really proactively increased their manga publishing and their manga offering, I think a lot of Dark Horse's stagnant titles are pretty dead in the water. I don't see them being continued or completed. Notably for me would be like
Dark
MPD
Horse.
Psycho. I don't think
Yeah.
that would ever. It's a little too edgy for other publishers, because that one's full on, and it's longer. I just don't like Kurosagi Corpse Delivery is already skirting the line, and I don't think such graphically violent or confronting manga really. Typically, like, it can get popular but not mainstream popular, and I think for titles that are 20 something volumes long, you need it to be a more mainstream hit.
Yeah, like, you can get a Shintaro Kago manga in English, but it has to be one book.
And you can,
or two, I guess.
Yeah. Or you can get like an Attack on Titan, but the violence in that is just so non-realistic. It's kind of detached from the reality, compared to stuff like MPD Psycho, where it's just viscerally in your face and you're like, oof, this is a lot.
Due to rights issues, I don't think we're ever gonna get any more Kingyo used books. Which someone asked a question about, I think.
Yeah, or asked if that was really the reason, and I'd argue yes, especially considering like the English publisher is going to be different from the Japanese publisher, and so what is allowed and isn't allowed to be referenced will differ between versions, so it's just kind of messy and complicated.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because, you know, we did get stuff like Skullface bookseller Honda-san, but of course she always, you know, carefully censors out the titles of what she's talking about, even if it's obvious, so.
And it wouldn't make sense to change titles or change names in the same way that, you know, the JoJo releases have had to do, because then you're ultimately losing that direct reference, which is kind of the point of that series, is to directly reference things.
Recommend books. Yeah. You should read this. If you're feeling this way, this would be a great read.
Baz at Bashira asked 2 questions. The first one being, if you could pick one discontinued series to revive, which would it be? I think we've covered that pretty thoroughly. But they also asked do you think discontinued series that have 100+ volumes in Japan, such as Golgo 13, have any chances of getting reprinted, or do you think these series would become digital-only releases if relicensed? As I said, I think, yeah. If they have a chance, it would either be greatest hits edition, sort of like what we're seeing from Lupin, or a full digital release, or a partial digital release.
Yeah, I agree.
I honestly don't know how Conan is still, like, being released in print.
Right? Like, someone must love Detective Conan on that staff, man.
I know, it's so
Honestly,
many volumes.
Thank you. I love Detective Conan. Thank you.
Like,
Mysterious fan.
I don't not want Conan available. I just don't understand how there's 80-something volumes in English, ongoing, still being released, every couple months. It's just crazy.
And still with all of the changed names from the beginning.
Yeah. It's one of those things that I think comparatively, like, I think that's a good point. If Conan was being licensed now, unless it was a full digital release through like a Shonen Jump style of thing, we'd be getting best of kind of greatest cases of releases similarly to, as we're seeing with Lupin, or as Viz tried to attempt with Oishinbo and Golgo 13. I just can't see it getting a full release in the way that it is now.
I wonder if they would still have to change the name if they tried now. Do you think Conan the Barbarian would still try to sue them?
I don't know. Maybe.
Wild.
Yeah, it's weird. For the next question, we're blazing through the questions, but there's a lot of similar sentiments. So I apologize if we're not like directly addressing everyone who's asked. Is there any series you wish could continue? Because I think the same answer applies to most. But 365 Days of 801 asked, not having all of Wandering, or said that not having all of Wandering Sun won't ever stop hurting. I feel that if it was not published now, we'd get the full run. I think we both agree to that. It was published too early to capitalize on shifting social views and diverse manga reading tastes in the West. Do you agree? Yep. And any other similar examples that, again, yeah, I think we just mentioned or already said. I think some of the stuff like Eden, It's an Endless World, probably would have seen a conclusion if it was being released now versus 2008 or whenever it was that was being released.
Yeah.
I'd also say that some series that maybe you would have expected to be popular at the time, and probably were popular at the time, but either got dropped because of financial issues or whatever, probably would also see their full run. The one that always comes to my mind is Future Diary, which is not a series that like I'm personally invested in, but they got like Tokyo put out 10 volumes out of 12. Like it got really close to the end there, and I was somewhat surprised when like Dead Man Wonderland got relicensed, but Future Diary didn't. Because I feel like that would appeal to a lot of people. And I also feel like right now, the death game style of content, especially after like Squid Game and things, probably would be doing pretty well. So, you know.
This Inubaka Crazy for Dogs would have been... really missed the boat on the pet manga.
Oh my god.
22 volumes of pet manga? That's nothing these days.
Yeah, jeez. That's called a bestseller.
Right there.
You'd have box sets and everything. And coloring books. And all sorts of things.
Coloring books.
The second question, asked by 365, was also which discontinued series hurts the most? It's usually the ones with one last volume, isn't it? My answer is, and this isn't even necessarily like a good manga, but it is one that is like infinitely frustrating, and that is Ghost Hunt.
Yeah. I had a feeling this would come up.
Del Rey put out 10 volumes out of 11? 10 volumes out of 11. And it ended on a cliffhanger, and there was just one more volume, and it was the final, like, wrapped everything up for the character arc and everything in this last volume. And Del Rey, unlike with Mushishi, where they're like, well, we'll just cramp all the last volumes into one big omnibus and get the rest out. They're like, you know what we're gonna do? We're just gonna say, it's like, on to the next case, and final panels, and it's like, the end. I'm like, I know that's not the end. You can't. Alright, cool. It was very frustrating, and it's also doubly frustrating because that arc and kind of the couple volumes before the final, the last 3 volumes or whatever, was the final arc of the novels, of which they were adapting. That's also the only arc that the anime never adapted either. So there's like no way to complete this series unless you read the novel, which obviously is in Japanese, or you finish the series via scans or through the Japanese publication. It's just like, oh, guys, really? What?
The pain.
Frustration abounds.
I have mentioned mine already, but it is Immortal Reign, which I own the first 8 volumes of, which are the only volumes that were released. This is an 11-volume series, so they basically cut out the climax of the manga. It's basically like if you watch Trigun and you get to the part where you get, like, the whole backstory behind Bash the Stampede and Millions Knives and, like, the reason all of this is happening, and then that's it. That's all you ever get in English. Fuck you. Fuck you and all of your friends.
Oh, God, yeah.
I should pick them up in Japanese, huh?
Mm-hmm.
God. But then, gee, the spines will be different on my shelf.
I know. It's just the eternal conundrum, right? Because that's the other thing is, like, if you have a series partially in print as well, and then it's completed digitally, you're like, well...
Yeah, oh my gosh.
I could...
Me with Drops of God. I'm like, how did we ever get any more Drops of God? But also now I physically cannot own everything that we have in English. I'm angry.
Yeah. It's similar. It's the same. Like, I don't own any of the print releases, but I can only imagine the annoyance of someone who has, like, a solid chunk of Beck, for example, and they're like, I just want the rest of it, guys.
Please, for me.
This is why...
And, like, I hate to bring up... I hate to bring up the 12 Kingdoms again, but, like, those volumes... for being YA, they're quite difficult Japanese, and they are... they're hard, and I would rather read them in English. Because kanji is difficult, and everybody has stupid kanji names in the 12 Kingdoms. And there's so much lore. And I'm really angry that the only volumes that we got are the exact ones that are already covered in the anime. Please, I just want the other ones.
Yeah.
I know this story. I watched it. Please give me the rest.
Please give me more content. Please. Why can't... I'm just asking, why can't we 12 Kingdoms fans have something amazing happen to us, like all of the Full Metal Panic fans did, and get the volumes that we don't have? Guys, please.
Right?
Or Slayers.
I cannot emphasize enough how perfect the current cultural moment is for the 12 Kingdoms. Please. Please, before this trend dies.
I was gonna say, if we're in that vein as well, like, I would love if another, maybe more Japan-focused publisher licensed something like Moribito, because we caught 2 volumes from HarperCollins? I can't remember. And I don't think they did very well, but I also think that's because they're like, well, this is just a YA kind of, or a middle grade fantasy story, which it is, but also, like, there's weebs that would buy it. Anime. And they didn't know that it was being released. You could have capitalized on that. But ultimately, I'd find that most people... Obviously, the series that you're personally invested in are the ones that hurt the most, but I think there's also just kind of, like, some universally agreed upon series that, like Gintama, I think most people would agree that would do well, right? Like, it's frustrating that it hasn't seen further releases or licensing, because it is very different now as a manga fan than it was in 2008 or 2010.
Yeah. Same with, like, Wandering Sun. It's just, there's some series where it's just like, you so narrowly missed your moment.
And also sometimes it's just like a publisher issue, because, and we'll talk a little bit more about this, I think, but the fact that some of these titles were licensed by Tokyo Pop versus a Del Rey or the fact that it's published by Fantagraphics versus a Viz has made it more difficult to be hopeful that it would get further relicense or further release. Or a Dark Horse.
Oh boy. A death knell for manga.
I still have like all of my fingers and toes crossed that I will just keep getting volumes of not One Punch Man, Mob Psycho 100, because that's really all I want. If I get more Kurosagi Corpse delivery service, I'll be happy, but like I just want Mob to be finished, and every month that I don't get a new volume, I'm always on like eggshells just waiting. Like, please don't drop this halfway, because I have zero faith. I have zero faith in Dark Horse.
There's also some like that either got done in by like marketing and design. Like, I'm looking at Reborn now, and I know as when I was in high school, I would have ate that up if the first volume didn't have that weird little creature on the front, and I didn't look at it thinking that it was a gag manga instead of like Fujoshi bait, which I was super into Fujoshi bait. Like, you know, if I had known that it was in the, you know, the Black Butler, like, Get Backers kind of vein, then I would have ate that shit up, but I thought it was a gag series, and the blurb did not do anything to make me feel any different. So that seems like a weird choice.
I mean, to be fair to Reborn, it is a gag manga for like half of it. and then they stopped publishing it right when it changed to the Fujoshi bait. which was just not the right decision to make whatsoever.
I think My Heavenly Hockey Club probably would have benefited from a different title. I remember reading that one. It's cute. It's, you know, the Oran fans would have liked it, but what is that title?
Yeah, and we already mentioned Moyashimon, but like, what does that title say to you? Nothing. Nothing,
and the cover designs say even less. Like, why wouldn't they just blow up those cute little microbe things and put a few of them on the cover? Like, they're cute and charming. So, like, there are the little microbe things on the cover, but it's like, they're so tiny and arranged in the ugliest, like, American flag-looking design you've ever seen in your life. It's like, what? This is a series about college life. Like...
college life in Japan, a bunch of microbiome students. Like, these are... this is not... what?
So weird. So weird. Person who designed those covers, I just want to talk.
Well, I think also part of that is that when that series was being put out by Vertical, they're like, no, we want this to like appeal to non-manga fans. We want this to like break into the mainstream, and that's never a good idea. Oh my gosh. Guys, no, it will find mainstream attraction if it has a foot in the weeb sector. It will find its audience. I promise. You don't have to shun the 15-year-olds who want to buy every manga.
Yeah. Yeah, it's you know, they figured it out eventually. Also, the other one I wanted to mention, I believe this was mainly just a casualty of Del Rey. Del Rey, I think, going out was Sayonara Setsubo Sensei. Which is a weird one, but that anime was popular. So, I really think that one probably had a shot at getting more out in English than it did, but it kind of was picked up on the tail end of a dying publisher, so...
Yeah, I think part of that one, to me, that doesn't, like, I can't see it being relicensed, is that it's just dated.
It would not be
No,
relicensed.
it's just too
It's dated now.
Compared to, like, Gintama, where, like, poop jokes are always funny. They're just always funny. Anyone will laugh at a poop joke. But, like, something comedy referencing, like, the geopolitical situation between Japan and China in 2005, like, nobody's gonna really, that doesn't work. People don't care about that.
No, I was gonna say, I don't think Setsubo Sensei would do well now at all, because the humor does not pass the vibe check in 2022 at all. It's not, Nope.
It's all...
The fact that the joke is that the main character keeps trying to hang himself is in front of students is, that sure happened. But I just think that, like, at the time, if it hadn't been picked up by a publisher on its way out, it probably would have gotten further than it did.
Yeah.
But...
yeah, I agree.
It wouldn't. It can be left in the past, though.
It's
fine.
I'm honestly, like, super surprised that the anime has gotten licensed. Like, they put in a ton of work for that, and I'm sure it's well appreciated. As someone who has seen the anime, like, it's not a series I need to see again. It was of its era, even when I saw it. Like, it's not... I mean, maybe someone would argue that it's... I don't know. You could argue it's worth watching for that era of Shaft Studios before everything just became Bakemonogatari Light. But I don't know.
But then you remember the little immigrant girl living in the sewers, who the joke is that nobody knows where she's from.
Yeah.
And you think, you know what? Maybe as a culture we've moved past this.
Maybe this wasn't funny then, and it's even less funny now.
Yeah.
Yeah, yikes. So on that note, we have our last batch of questions, all from Stories on Shelves at Storage Shelves, but there's quite a few questions here. So their first question is...
our unofficial moderator.
Yes. Are there any discontinued series you own on your shelves? For me, it's Wandering Sun from Eroka with Love. There might be one other, but pretty much that's it. I don't like to chase up titles that are incomplete because I know I'll be frustrated that they're incomplete.
Yeah. And for me, it's Immortal Reign and Drops of God.
Yeah. I'd really like to read Immortal Reign, and you see a lot of the volumes pop up for really cheap, but I'd be too sad. I'd just be too sad reading it.
It's good, G. It's good.
I'd prefer to borrow it from someone else who owns it rather than have, like, another sad series on my shelf that's like, yeah, this is all of it, but not all of it. This is all you're ever gonna see. And I'm like,
Yeah, me, like, struggling with whether I actually want to buy Nana or not.
Yeah, pretty much. Notable mention for this question, my younger sister, she has a fair few manga herself, manga, manhwa, and comics of other various types. And her discontinued series that she owns is Bride of the Water God. She has all 17 volumes out of the 24-volume series that Del Rey put out. And I will say that I don't know if she's read them all. So, like, that gives you an indication of how often my sister actually reads the comics. But, yeah, we are definitely not getting any more of that. And so that's a big chunk of comic that probably also would do pretty well right now because it's of that, like, Eastern fantasy style of isekai type story. Like, it could do really good, and manhwa's popular at publishers. Hire me. I have good opinions.
Right. Oh, I have a couple volumes of Bride of Deimos as well.
Oh, that's the other one, Bride of Deimos. I have the full English run, 7 volumes out of however many it is. More than that.
I only have 1 or 2.
It's fine.
You know,
it's
as I happen across them, I'll get them.
And that one, again, similarly to, like, Eroica, it's pretty episodic, so it's not like you need the full volume 1 to however many. I think it's 17 volumes in Japan. So we got half-ish of it. And that was a Comics 1 release. Jeez. That's not a name you hear pop up very often.
I also do own the 12 Kingdoms novels that were
Samesies. I also have Moribito, the 2 books that we got, at least. And would pay for more, but they just don't want money. Yeah. So stories on shelves' next question is, are series only discontinued for economic reasons or publisher issues, or have other reasons ever been factors? I think the main one is obviously economic reasons. Things are not selling well. The license was far more more than what they are willing to continue with, and obviously publishing costs, translation costs, etc., etc., etc. Plus, again, the economic crisis, financial crisis that was happening in the world in the mid-2000s. The world was not actually that different to what it is today, but the publishing side of the industry has gotten more of a foothold. A lot less of business is done with kind of like future guarantees, because we saw how that happened in 2008. So there's a lot less false demand, and there's a lot less titles, glut of titles that don't have any demand within the market. So I feel like nowadays, if a title is licensed, it's because there's demand. They will see sales. Or again, like this, a lot of publishers going bankrupt, turning into other publishers. So Del Rey turning into Kodansha, and then splitting off, kind of vertical sort of splintering off, and then now having been reabsorbed by Kodansha. Tokyo Pop going into hibernation for a decade. And then also like weird little publishers like CMX, ADV, like they published manga for a little while. There's been a lot of companies that tried and didn't do very well.
There's just a lot of, what were you thinking?
Well, also there was like, you see certain anime publishers like ADV, and Bandai was another one, where they'd license spin-off manga to popular series for them. So like we got a lot of weird Code Geass manga. We got the Erika 7 manga. And all of these are completed, or at least from my knowledge are completed. But and Lucky Star is one that wasn't completed but did get like a pretty solid run. I think 5 or 6 volumes in English were released through ADV or Bandai. And that's just
Here's one even from Media Blasters.
Mm-hmm. It's like...
Dojin Work.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird. And Aiken. Oh my god, Media Blasters licensed Aiken. To go with their anime release.
Oh my god.
No.
Oh my god. The amount of cursed publishers that tried, and one that is kind of still trying to put out Kodomo no Jiken is just too many.
Oh my god.
Too many.
The desperation to bring that one out is... Oh my god.
Yeah. Just, guys, please, that one should have never made its resurrection, and yet it got fully crowdfunded on Kickstarter for that to be... And it's like, guys...
Kannagi was Bandai.
Mm-hmm.
Just so weird. Strange relics.
Mm-hmm. So I think that's sort of the secondary thing of like a lot of discontinued series were because of low sales and high costs, not a very high return on investment, if any return on investment at all, or again publisher issues, bankruptcy, mergers and acquisitions, things like that. But also there was just a time when anime publishers were like, how hard could manga be? And then also tried it and found out, wait, this is hard. And so...
Yep.
Plus, as we discussed a little bit earlier, marketing, I think, really didn't help a lot of publishers, especially Kodansha, trying to market things as like cooler than those kid comics, cooler than like what most people think of as like anime comics.
Yeah, they're like real books for real people.
Anyone can enjoy this, and you're like, yep, I mean, anyone could have enjoyed just how it was originally as well, but you know, we don't. That's fine.
Yeah.
In a similar sense, Fantagraphics trying to sell their manga to their kind of deluxe comics focused market without understanding why the manga market is very different from their typical buyership, right? Like most manga fans, especially people getting into manga's cheap. Like I know we complain about prices and we've seen an increase in prices over time, but manga is cheap and accessible, and that's why kids like it, aside from also like obviously it's pretty easy to follow a story that's continuous. You always know like which volumes to get and blah blah blah, plus the diversity in stories. But like a kid can buy 3-4 volumes of manga for $20-$30, especially if there's a sale. You're never going to be able to sell manga for $40 a volume, and there's 15 volumes, and this is already like a niche queer story that doesn't, it's like, it's not Naruto, right? This doesn't have the cultural pop culture impact. Wandering Sun, yeah, I really feel like if it was being released now, it would have done much better. And Fantagraphics maybe should have just, and I think they've learned to stick to shorter series classics that do have a historical significance, and that like more adult or more collectors who are willing to pay more for a deluxe edition are happy to shell out $40 or $60 for a book. No, I mean, maybe not happy to, but are more willing to, versus like the 15-year-old who gets $20 a month and spends that all on manga.
Yeah. You know, my ongoing struggle to get people to read Moto Hagio when all of the Moto Hagio books available in English are like $50.
I mean, it's changing.
Like, I'll pay $50, but like nobody else will.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully soon you can just direct them to They Were 11 and they won't have to pay $50. And that will be better. And then they'll be hooked, and then they will want to pay $50 for Heart of Thomas.
But what if I'm trying to get Takarazuka fans to read the whole clan?
Oh no.
Two $50 books.
Yeah, God.
3 even, because hopefully we'll be getting the sequels eventually.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah, I mean, there's always outliers. There's always other issues. I'm sure there's been times where a Japanese creator has just been like, "Oi, I don't like how you put out my book. I revoke the license." There's definitely been that happening over the course of manga being available in English. Especially with how some companies have burnt bridges in the past. So
it's okay, you can say Stu Levy.
I'm still so surprised how readily Tokyo
Call
Pop...
him Milky.
Oh God, don't even start. I'm just still surprised that like there are publishers willing to work with Tokyo Pop, and it must be because of how good the reputation of like the German Tokyo Pop is, because I don't know how Tokyo Pop has gotten like such solid licenses since their return.
Right. Oh my gosh. It's insane. This man. This strange man.
Why is he back? Why can't... Frey.
Next question.
Yeah. Next question is another one from Story on Shelves. What are some series that still have readers or people interested in reading / collecting? Gintama's big one. Wandering Sun's a big one. I'm sure there's people who are like upset that Lupin isn't getting like a full reprint versus just like best of hits. I mean, every incomplete series, Reborn would be another one where so many people are wanting to be able to own that and read it in full. And I kind of have a feeling that maybe one day we will see it in kind of like a Kanzenban edition, similarly to like what's happening with Shaman King, where they just have larger omnibus editions. But I think part of that would have to be reliant on either a new anime project, like maybe a reboot or something, or another new smash hit from that particular creator. She has a series ongoing right now, but I don't think it's necessarily that popular. But I do see that I could see a publisher revisiting that in like a omnibus edition somewhere down the line.
Yeah, basically same thing.
All
of the series that you said.
Yeah, the other one is Eden. It's an Endless World. I know there's a lot of manga bros who want those last 2 volumes or 4 volumes or whatever it is. And are not happy that it's incomplete. So, you know, there's certainly a lot of people who would be up for seeing a continuation of that.
Yeah, there's also a Jiro Taniguchi manga called The Times of Botchan that I would presume is related to the classic novel by Natsume Soseki that was released by Fanfare Ponetmon, but was dropped. I'm sure that Jiro Taniguchi collectors would like to have that.
Mm-hmm.
As
And,
well.
yeah. Future Diary's the other one. Again, like, I just feel like anything with 1 or 2 volumes, especially like a action drama series like that, would... There's definitely people who are like, oh, I just want the rest of it, which is valid. Like, that's fair.
Yeah.
I want to know how it ends, too.
I just want it to end.
One that we haven't mentioned yet, and it's a weird one, and it's probably one that this is related to publisher weirdness. Thanks Dark Horse. We love you. Is Club 9, which is a bit of an older one. It's by what's his name? Makoto Kobayashi. So fairly prominent mangaka, well known, well respected. And I've never read any of it. I've heard nothing but good things. It's pretty fun, from what I know. That got 8. So it's 9 volumes long in Japanese. It got 8 volumes collected in tankobon in English, and then the last part of it you can read in English, but only through the single floppies. Like, you can't get it in any other way. And you're like, why? Guys! What?
I'm also looking at one I've heard a lot of the manga bros talking about, because this is the prison school creator. But he has a very different series called Me and the Devil Blues.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Which was discontinued. I'm sure there are plenty of people who would love to see that one finished in English.
The next question from Stories on Shelves was, any authors whose works haven't returned in English since their series were discontinued? Because a lot of the time we do see a return from these creators, either through other works being licensed down the line, or one of their other later series becoming fairly popular. Again, I mentioned Takako Shimura, Sweet Blue Flowers, and then they were, even though we're adults, so we've seen some more from her. But a lot of the times, these creators kind of, the fact that their series were discontinued in English means that they're quote-unquote proven failures for the English market, which is not always the case, right? Like, that shouldn't be the standard, but I think there's this idea that if one series doesn't make it, then, you know, why take the risk on another one?
Yeah, and Mari Okazaki comes to mind again with Supli here, because she does have a lot of josei series that you would think would have been brought over with this josei boom, but apparently Supli was enough.
Yeah, we've had we got one single volume from Viz digitally many years ago, and I think that was maybe them trying to test the waters again, but digital only releases are never going to sell as well, especially from Viz, who well, at that point had almost only ever done print and digital. It's a little bit different now, but
she doesn't deserve this.
No, no, she doesn't.
I also was looking at the Gaku and Alice creator, sticks out to me a bit. She had Gaku and Alice and The Portrait of M&N, which both got discontinued, and I don't believe we've seen anything from her in English since. Which I don't feel any particular sort of way about that. Both of those are weird series, but it, yeah, she just sort of kind of dropped off the English-speaking face of the planet.
Yeah. I think, I don't think Morinaga, so the creator of My Heavenly Hockey Club, has ever had a series completed in English. She had, like, two or three series being published by, namely, Tokyo Pop, and I think all of them were cut short. The other one that I know for certain was You're in My Secret, which is that has some issues. It's very problematic. But it was very of its time and would have been quite popular for when it was being released. And it's kind of interesting to see that, like, literally none of her works ever saw their conclusion in English.
Isn't it weird that we got like 20 or 30 or something volumes of Gash Bell? That's so weird.
It is weird. Yeah, it's weird.
Huh.
It's also weird that, like, Viz put out 90% of, like, the Hikaru no Go anime, and then, like, the last 10 episodes they just never put out on DVD. They're like, oh yeah, you can stream them 10 years afterwards.
Oh my god.
And you're like, guys!
Like, wait, what? Wait, stop. Those were the ones that stuck out to me.
Mm-hmm. Their follow-up question is, alternatively, any authors whose works have been relicensed or reintroduced to the English market. Again, I don't want to be sounding like a record player here, repeating myself too much. Obviously, yeah, as I said, we've seen stuff from Takako Shimura, we've seen stuff from... we have seen some of these creators come back, whether it's through one-shots or more popular series or whatever. The one that I always think about, because their Discontinued series was completed in English digitally after the fact, and we now have another one of his ongoing series is Harold Sakushi, the creator of Beck.
Yeah, Harold Sakuishi.
Yeah, and he is also currently doing 7 Shakespeares, which I actually really enjoy that series. I like both those series. And so it's been interesting to see his work pop back up as something that people might want to support, but might not want to support 34 print volumes of.
I mentioned both Kaori Ozaki and Keiko Suenobu with Immortal Reign and Life both getting discontinued, but then years later, both of them having other works of theirs being brought out to more success.
The other one is, we just talked about, was Makoto Kobayashi, Club 9, being kind of incomplete, kind of complete, but now we're seeing a full re-release of What's Michael, a very, I'd say, pretty popular cat manga, and kind of, hitting right on that trend of weird pet manga that we're seeing a lot of right now. The next question is also our final question, again from Stories on Shelves, and I mean, this is, we've said this already, but series you'd love to see make a return. Let's talk about series we'd love to see make a return, regardless of the reality of publishing, regardless of the constraints of reality and capitalism.
Yeah. Okay. Freedom.
For me, obviously, I would love to see Wandering Sun completed. We've said that 400 times. From Eroka with Love would be fantastic. Swan as well. Bride of Deimos. Give me more creepy shoujo horror. But also Moyashimon. Like, I legitimately really would love Moyashimon to make a return. Yeah. And also, just throwing it out there, this never got released. It got licensed. It never got released in any capacity. And that would be the Vamp light novel, which is a 5-volume light novel from the creator of Baccano and Durarara. Yeah. It was licensed by Seven Seas in 2010, 2011.
Vampires.
And just never was released ever. And I cry. I cry every day. Give me that give me that light novel, please. I want it.
Please. I want it. I want Ryogo Narita vampires. That's all I want. Day in and day out, it's all I want.
It's only 5 volumes, you guys. His other 2 series and spin-offs of those series do so well. Yen Press, please. Seven Seas, you let me down before, but I could give you another chance. Why?
Yeah, I echo all of those. I am always a fiend for more 70s shoujo, and especially year 24 in English. So from Eroica, Swan, Bride of Deimos, would love any and all of those. Gintama, I love Gintama. I'm a big... I love Gintama a lot. I would love to see more Gintama. Immortal Reign, please, dear God, I just want the last 3 volumes. That's all I want. Supli, like, the big thing that keeps me from reading that one, from picking it up, is just knowing that we don't have all of it, and not wanting to deal with that. I would like to have all of it, and then I will pick it up. And the 12 Kingdoms.
12 Kingdoms!
7 Seas, please. Anyone, please.
I want it to be... 7 Seas, if you give me lovely deluxe versions like you're giving your Danmai, I will be happy. J-Novel, if you give me any sort of version, I will be happy. But especially if you give me lovely hardcover oversized editions, a la Full Metal Panic / the other one, Banner of the Stars. Please, I would give you so much money. Seven Seas, if you want to give me an edition like you're doing with Slayers, hardcover, pretty nice, I wouldn't be upset about that. Or Yen Press. Well, Yen On, technically. I would just... It's there, guys. It suits you so much.
I'm not picky, okay? Like, I have the Tokyo Pop original volumes that have hilariously just, like, progressively degrading paper quality as you get further in the release. I don't care. I do not care. J-Novel, if you give it to me digitally... I would love that too. Yes. I don't care, please.
Yes. My biggest dream for the 12 Kingdoms would be for, and I think only Yen On / Yen Press does this, but similarly to some of their Morimi single volumes novels, just a nice hardcover with a dust jacket. I'm not picky. I don't need a lot in life. I just want things. Like, I just want to have it. Guys.
And with that, I think our violent screed is over.
But thank you, everyone who sent in your wonderful questions. Lots to talk about. Lots of beloved series that are gone but not forgotten. Right? Plenty that have fallen over the years and just have been lost to time. You know, we absolutely did not mention every single discontinued series in English. If we did, we'd be here for 5 hours. And most of them, let's be frank, are not worth talking about because they are not very good. There's a lot of stuff out there that does deserve to be seen, to be read, to be finished.
We didn't even mention the saddest discontinued title of all. The Quasar of Stigmata.
Oh my god, I forgot that got licensed.
I've reminded you.
Thanks, Ray.
Now you have to live with that.
I knew there's a reason why this was a mutual co-hosted podcast.
Neon Genesis Evangelion, Legend of the Pico Pico Middle School Students. Noodle Fighter Miki. Oh, my brother. Quantum Mistake. Ratman. Red Hot Chili Samurai.
Oh.
Samurai Harem. Asuno Yoichi. Satisfaction Guaranteed. Sergeant Frog. 21 volumes.
Okay, that's one that, like, I see people pick up even now, like, just weird volumes of Sergeant Frog. And I cannot believe that got so far in its publishing as it did.
Junk Force. You can stop me at any time.
Yeah, I'm gonna wrap it up here. Ultimately, what we've learned is that Tokyo Pop was a blight on everyone and everything. And really...
Made War Chronicle.
No! Stop! We are finished. We're no longer talking about discontinued manga. Because there's so many, and I think we covered the ones that are worth talking about in any capacity. Whether they be some of our personal favorites or not, there's a lot that... Yeah, there's a lot of junk out there, and I don't think anyone's crying over the fact that Junk Force wasn't completed, but, I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's a dedicated fan out there, but I'd expect they're probably more broken up over something like Gintama. Right? Like, sometimes things deserve to be forgotten. Yes, thank you everyone who sent in your wonderful questions. Hopefully this has been an enjoyable listen. Maybe it's made you think of all of those marvelous series that you've started and just will never be able to complete. Maybe it's reminded you of all of those titles that, hey, you really want to check out, but also you know that it's missing the last 3 volumes and you're just not about that life. So, which is fair and valid and pretty much my outlook on things. I think Ray and I are pretty in agreement that nowadays there's not too many series that get discontinued or dropped. Majority of publishers know their audience, knows what sells, and even if it's not selling well, majority of publishers will push out the rest, even if it, like, just to get it out there and so it doesn't have an incomplete series. A good example of that is LDK. That got omnibuses for its last volumes or couple volumes. Something else as well. Yamada and the Seven Witches, maybe. There's been a couple instances where we've had obviously series that probably weren't selling too well just get 2-in-1s or 3-in-1s for the final volumes just to get it out the door. Let fans finish things, and let the publisher move on. It's not too often that you see something be dropped midway, unless it's for very, I don't know, legal issues or something. So we've kind of moved past a majority of the issues that have plagued manga into making series be discontinued. A lot of the publishers are solidly inset in the industry that we're unlikely to see a purge of publishers like we did after the GFC. So, you know, we're in a different place. So hopefully future generations and our current generation doesn't have to suffer too much more thinking like, will this series ever see its conclusion? That's not to say that there isn't some series that are on very thin ice Dark Horse. But we hope and wish for the best.
Yeah.
So next month we are talking about Nobari no O. I've finally done it. I'm finally making you read this, Ray. Finish it, please. So I can have someone to talk to about this series.
Okay, but in exchange, we have to do Shonen Note once that starts coming out in English.
Was that even a question? Was that even a question of whether we'd be doing that right? Of course we're doing Shonen Note.
Please, hurry up. Seven Seas or whoever picked it up. Kodansha. I don't remember. Kodansha. My loves. Thank you. I will finally have someone to scream with.
I have the first 3 volumes pre-ordered. I will not be missing this. Anyway, next month we are talking about Nobari no O, which is Yuki Kamitani's first serialized work. I don't know if it's necessarily their first ever manga, but it's definitely their first series. It's also their longest series so far at 14 volumes. It's an action shonen drama. And we've talked a little bit about this series before on the podcast when we did our Yuki Kamitani spotlight. But I want to really talk about it a lot. So send in your questions, whether they be about the manga, which we did get the entirety of in English from Yen Press, or you can also send in questions about the anime, which is a close but original ending adaptation. It got to volume 8 or whatever that was out at the time and just was like, okay, well, we'll just do whatever for the ending. And it'll be interesting, I think, to discuss, or at least for me to point out the differences in adaptation. There's some pretty interesting decisions that the anime team did. So, if you have any questions, be sure to send them our way, or either on Twitter, so that is at, wait, what is my at? G-Reads! I changed! It's at G-Reads now.
G_reads.
Yes. G_reads. Be sure to send your questions that way when we are asking for them. Otherwise, you can also leave them in the comment section down below if you are listening to this on YouTube. You can find us on YouTube at Simply G, my YouTube channel. We are also hosted on pretty much every major podcasting platform, whether that be Spotify, Anchor FM, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, wherever you like to listen to people talking. We'll be there. So, if you enjoyed us, be sure to either subscribe or follow us and make sure that you don't miss out on any future episodes. Otherwise, be sure to follow Ray on all of her social medias. She is at Whimsical Pics on Twitter, and she is Whimsical Pictures on YouTube. The scant amount that she spends on there these days. And yes, she's wonderful, so go follow her. Anything else?
I post a lot of theater girls.
Yes, you do. One day we'll do a Takarazuka episode.
Maybe when Kageki Shoujo has more volumes.
Yeah. It'll hit... Well, we're already at 5? The 5th one just came out, so...
Yeah, quite a few. Yeah, there's still quite a few to go, though, with what it has in Japanese.
I know 12 just came out in Japan, so... Yeah.
Yep.
Future plans.
Anyway.
But thank you so much, everyone, for listening. As always, stay safe, stay kind. I will catch you in the next episode. Bye till then.
Bye, guys.